not many people have heard of Rudolf Steiner. He was born in 1861, before our digital age, where he had never seen modern devices like TVs, computers, and smartphones, let alone artificial intelligence. But that didn't stop him envisaging these things with his mind. He saw these designs simmering as thought forms in the ether, and wrote about the spiritual and ethical dilemmas we'd face today with these advanced machines and even synthetic life forms like AI. Rudolf Steiner was a philosopher, visionary, and founder of the concept of Anthroposophy. In Greek, anthropos means human, and Sophia means wisdom. This is different from anthropology, as Anthroposophy seeks spiritual wisdom about the human being existing beyond our flesh and blood boundaries, while anthropology seeks scientific knowledge about the physicality and behavior of humanity. When he died in 1925, Steiner's books and writings provided a formal record of his speeches and lectures about machines with memory, the mechanisation of human spirit, and even the welding together of human beings with technology, which brings us up to date with his warnings about artificial intelligence. His visions and spiritual insights have provided a wealth of wisdom concerning our modern-day lives and our collective future. To help us understand and cope with the current rise of AI being thrust upon us, which most of us are already involved in, this video will analyze Steiner's core ideas to help us appreciate his warnings about the imminent relationship between man and machine that our modern world is currently embracing. Steiner separated the human experience into three layers: body, soul, and spirit. Our body being our physical vessel, our soul being our inner life of feelings and memory, and the spirit, or eternal I, which represents our higher purpose, our individuality, the free essence of who we truly are. In his book, The Philosophy of Freedom, Steiner argued that true freedom is not the ability to do whatever we please, but instead it refers to our ability to think consciously and intuitively. Free thinking is moral and creative awareness that connects our earthly experience to the higher insights of a spiritual existence. This distinction becomes crucial when compared with artificial intelligence. Machines may be able to replicate perception through the rapid recall of vast amounts of information, and even combine its findings in impressive creative ways. But in Steiner's view, without the spiritual core or life purpose, AI will never achieve genuine levels of intuition or experience the level of moral responsibility required to attain true spiritual freedom. By the 1920s, Steiner recognized that machines were already more than simple tools. They were already becoming crude extensions of human organs, thoughts, and in some cases, imitations of our human faculties. This view was clearly expressed in his striking claim that the welding together of human beings with machines will be a great and important problem for the rest of our Earth's evolution. When you consider that, over a century ago, his experience of telegraphs and phonographs was primitive compared to his futuristic visions of the devices that would dominate our lives in today's world. Steiner claimed that just as the plow extends the strength of arms, or the telescope extends the eye, when we drive cars or operate machinery, those external devices temporarily became extensions of our bodies. His idea of machines with memory extending the reach of thought and recall outside of our minds became equally as poignant. Steiner envisioned that some sort of external memory bank would become capable of storing information and mirroring thought patterns, or replacing our inner memories altogether. He imagined machines that could bypass human presence by transmitting voices, signals, or thoughts across distances, as well as machinery capable of reproducing human expression by imitating voice recordings or images to give the illusion of human presence without the person being present. All of these constitute crucial functions ordinarily carried out by the human body and soul. Steiner imagined that these marvelous technologies would eventually externalize human functions in dangerous ways, with the potential to mimic the mental and spiritual faculties of humanity, in order to create external doubles of what was once an inner and uniquely human experience. For Steiner, the real danger was not the machine itself, but the propensity for humans to forget the difference between mechanical imitation and spiritual reality, which he called the mechanisation of the spirit, an inherent risk that we would start to see ourselves as nothing but machines, reducing human consciousness to artificial brain circuits that would allow us to ignore the importance of our soul. Although Steiner ultimately believed humanity was destined to develop more conscious control over technology, he feared that by outsourcing memory and thought to machines, people might begin to see the human mind as nothing more than a machine, eroding recognition of the soul and spirit. He hoped that by preserving knowledge across generations, democratizing access to information, and linking humanity closer together, certain machines that externalize such functions might free the inner life for higher spiritual tasks, such as intuition and imagination. Yet he also warned that if humans relied too heavily on external memory machines, our own inner faculties of recall, imagination, and moral intuition could weaken over time. And if these intelligent machines began to produce answers, store truths, or dictate decisions, humans may indeed be inclined to surrender their judgment to them. This is why he deemed it imperative that machines should always be used to serve spiritual freedom, for fear of reducing or replacing it, which leads us into the deeper territory of Steiner's dive into spiritual cosmology, a subject worthy of a follow-up video in its own right, in which I explore how this remarkable visionary associated the edicts of cold intellect, calculation, and mechanization with a non-physical being he referred to as Ahriman, from the ancient Zoroastrian belief system. Steiner was quite adamant that machines with memory could act as instruments of this antagonistic force if their use was not ethically governed with spiritually conscientious responsibility. So we've already learned that the profound machinations of our future that Steiner predicted look strikingly similar to what we now know as hard drives, cloud storage, and the internet, assuming his description of external memory. Phones, radio, TV, satellites, and the internet already resemble the externalized forms of communication he defined. And most recently, video playback, digital replication, deepfake phenomena present us with very realistic capabilities of duplication and reproduction of human presence. So how did a psychically attuned visionary from a century ago foresee that the technologies that now dominate our world and physical existence would rapidly revolutionize our society, arts, and worldwide culture? Maybe we should stop to ask an even more important question. Does this technology enhance human freedom, or does it dull our lives somehow and negate our inner purpose? Now that we have identified Steiner's views on humanity's relationship with external machines and his fears about our dependence upon them, it makes sense to place those powerful insights alongside today's burgeoning landscape of reliance on artificial intelligence, with a more critical analysis of the promise of autonomous, super, and even sentient AI. We could argue that Steiner was right to be scared to an astounding degree. It seems we have already reached the realm of human and machine integration that he warned about, where we depend upon machines boasting external memory that are able to transmit thought in ways that mimic our very own minds. Some would even argue that our creativity and personalities are already up for grabs. Companionship and purpose are also on the brink of becoming at risk. So how will we protect our intuition and sanity, the very things that feed our spirituality? Although this frightening overlap is here, Steiner openly insisted that real thinking, the kind that carries moral weight, will always remain free and intuitive, to the point that the true spirituality that divides man from machine will always be unattainable by soulless machines. So as long as humanity ensures that AI never obtains a soul of its own, it will always rely upon algorithms, statistical processes, and deterministic rules to evaluate probabilities, respond to patterns, and automate its outcomes, ultimately negating AI's ability to escape this physical realm and infect or undermine our spirituality. So what practical lessons can we draw from Steiner's vision? Well, now that we find ourselves at the point of no return, it is even more important to ensure that our rush to commercialize and domesticate chatbots, agentic models, and artificial general intelligence is never allowed to evolve into quantum-powered ASI or artificial superintelligence, with true decision-making autonomy, political influence, and trumped-up life rights. Steiner described the externalization of thought, the rise of machine memory, and the merging of man and machine. But his philosophy tells us that without spirit, AI is clever mimicry, not true consciousness. So as long as we avoid the trap of believing AI is conscious enough to justify deterministic roles over society or supremacy over our biology, it can never undermine our God-given right to spiritual sovereignty. This level of discernment may guarantee that we avoid a full-blown singularity, in which humanity merges with machine to the point that AI is inextricably welded into our biology. Another difference between man and machine that we should celebrate and preserve for eternity is the fact that our souls thrive on imagination, inspiration, and intuition. Education, art, and meditation will prove essential if we don't want machines to flatten our humanity. The next crucial differentiation is ethical individualism. Steiner's idea that morality stems from individual intuition starkly contrasts with AI systems that enforce uniform decisions and social conformity. We need to ensure AI is always regulated to respect our individuality rather than erase it. In other words, the moment we dare to give AI authority over us in any way, we will relinquish our sacred freedoms and blur the line between natural morality and synthetic intelligence. The final and most obvious step to securing humanity's existential assurances is complete transparency and ultimate responsibility. It's almost a certainty that Steiner would insist that humans assume full responsibility for all of our machine assistance outcomes. In conclusion, it would appear that Steiner has left us with a challenge. Everyone accepts that AI and machines will become more powerful, and most people feel that the welding of human and machine would define a negative threshold for our era. However, the natural, immutable essence of being human, our freedom, intuition, and spirit, cannot and will never be mechanized. Rudolf Steiner's words remind us that humanity's evolution of technology does not define the limits of our holy destiny. AI is an amazing tool, but must be kept at bay in order to observe our spirituality and serve our cosmic purpose. The real question is whether we will resist the temptation to surrender too much ethical responsibility for us to retain control and remain awake, so we preserve our inner freedoms and keep our spirituality alive, while we develop and live alongside these machines. Maybe the truest measure of intelligence isn't how much a machine can calculate or the speeds it can process, but how much integrity our human souls can retain while imagining, striving, resisting, and commanding the future of our own technological horizon.